Welcome to the Growth Over Grades podcast, a show connecting you with thought leaders, pioneers, and change agents who are leading the charge to support schools and districts in making the shift toward competency-based education and to promote growth over grades. I'm Jordan Lewis, and on the show today, we have educator, connector, and advocate for hands-on, purpose-driven learning, Gina Schuyler. Gina currently serves as the administrator for community partnerships for Grayslake Community High School District 127 in Grayslake, Illinois, bringing in over 20 years of experience, where she is known for launching innovative programs that help students authentically explore opportunities based on their curiosity. In this role, Gina spearheads initiatives that link students with real-world career experiences, valuable dual credit opportunities, and pathway endorsements that truly go beyond traditional classroom experiences. Beyond her district work, Gina also consults with the Lake County Regional Office of Education, supporting CTE efforts within the region. She's instrumental in fostering collaboration between schools, employers, and students to build meaningful pipelines into the future workforce. On today's episode, we dive deep into Gina's insights on fostering real-world connections for students to help create authentic learning experiences, all aligned with their curiosity about the world. We explore the impacts of this on students' mastery and learning and the shifts this causes when it comes to student motivation and how we can collectively empower students to find their passions beyond the confines of the traditional classroom. Now to my conversation with Gina Schuyler. All right, Gina. Well, first off, Thank you for joining us here on the Growth Over Grades podcast. We're super excited to have you on today's show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Gina, we're going to start big picture here today. How do you define real world learning, and why should educators across North America care about that today?
I'm so excited to talk about real world learning. I'm fortunate to be at a district where we have a hashtag. It's hashtag D127 gets real, and that stands for real, engaging, authentic learning. And I think that is kind of the big picture, that nationally all students go to school and all caregivers want their students to eventually have a career, not just a job, but a career. And all too often we don't in education do a good job connecting all the smaller components to the bigger picture of the why. And I think work-based learning allows education to, on the spot, always answer the question that we've all heard from our students: when am I ever going to use this? Where we're able to apply that immediately so that they're not asking that question. We're hoping that they ask the question, when do I get to use this again? When do I get to do this again? I didn't know this existed. Students don't know what they don't know. They are familiar with what's put in front of them. I use healthcare and health science as an example all the time. Students know doctor, they know nurse, but until you break a bone, are you familiar with an orthopedic or physical therapy or all of the other elements that come into play there? So I truly believe that is our job in education, is to create authentic learning experiences for our students so that they're able to narrow down their likes and dislikes and make better post-secondary options. And those post-secondary options need to have a variety of options in front of students.
And call back to the why. And I talk to so many leaders, Gina, about, in education, and I just love the call out to making those authentic connections and to give students opportunity to experience what they may or may not like. I have to think back to my experiences in high school, and I was community service in order to graduate. Now, a lot of my friends took those 40 hours and didn't gain anything from it. But I saw that as such a unique opportunity to try a million different things, to try to figure out what is it that I like. Now, that was my experience in sort of that you had to do it. But with what you're describing, and I'm curious when we're thinking about embedding this into the K-12 in practice.
So what's neat, I think Illinois did a really nice job creating the career pathway endorsement process, where students identify an area of interest. And I always use the word curiosity. I'm very careful, especially with caregivers, to, we're not asking our kindergartners, fifth graders, eighth graders, even our freshmen in high school, we're not asking them to choose a career, but we are asking them to think about, what are you curious about? And when you do have to take a class. You need so many classes in order to graduate. Let's hone in on what we're curious about so that our electives and even our cores align with our curiosities to be able to answer a question. I always do a visual of two buckets for students. What do you like? Did you take the class? Are you still curious about it? What other classes can I take that are like this or align with this? Or I even think it's so important when we answer the question, I took it and I didn't like it. And that's okay not to like something. We've narrowed down what we figured out we didn't like. Maybe a student, did their 40-hour internship as a CNA and they realize they don't like blood. All too often, then we rule out the medical field entirely, where having engaging experiences for students and involving work-based learning, that's our job then to begin engaging in thoughtful conversation around, well, what did you like? Did you like working with patients? Did you like the medical terminology? Did you know that you could be a farm tech? And then lead them down other pathways, highlighting the aspects that they liked, removing the parts that they didn't, because in the end, that gives the community a better employee. You're not being ghosted. You're not having someone show up for one day and they realize they don't like something, because they're given time in high school to try things, safely fail, and then have supports around them to guide them through those next steps. And I think the more authentic our engagement is with students in any class, allowing that safe area to fail and be authentic and try something new, we're going to have a better product as far as a person in the end.
And how you're contextualizing it into work-based learning. But there's, Gina, a few reflect as a student on what you liked is awesome, and I love that. But I really love how you're talking about reflecting on what they didn't like and why. How do you create that space? Like, when are you having those conversations with students? Jack, like, talk to me about that space and how you're creating that.
So that's had to grow over time, because I think in schools, whether you're a counselor or a teacher, you're taught, I need to teach to the test. I have to get certain things done. And it really caused us, and that was maybe the good that came out of COVID, is that it caused us in education to kind of pause and say, are we really looking at our students as individuals? And during that time when we did the pause, it allowed us to kind of rethink, reimagine. We realized we could do things differently. And we were a district that didn't go back. We didn't go back to what was. We kept moving forward. And so that involves really getting to know your students. You're not diving into the syllabus the very first day of school. You're getting to know who the student is, what are they involved in, what makes them tick, what makes them aggravated, getting to know their body language, really taking more time to get to know them as a person. And then teaching our counselors, teaching all teachers, not just our counselors, not just our career exploration coordinators, that they're the ones that are guiding students. Every single person, it's a systematic change that takes place, that anyone that you engage with and any activity that you're planning in your classroom really can revolve around that. So you think of like freshman year, getting open-ended free response for a teacher to gain perspective on where a student is starting in writing. There's no reason why that writing can't be, what are you curious about? Now let's look at our district website. Let's look at the resources. What are you going to do? How are you going to advocate on your own to become familiar with what the district is offering you? What are clubs and activities? What are classes? Who are some teachers you can talk to? You're getting a writing sample, but you're also having them become advocates for themselves at the same time. And then I'm a huge believer on having linked LMS systems so that any caregiver, any stakeholder that's coming in contact with the student, including our employers, are able to kind of hone in and provide feedback to the students around their interests, their likes, their dislikes, so that everybody can kind of be active in that student's progress.
And to take one step back, Gina, just as we're talking about, the systematic change, and I think, it's worth double clicking on. Over time, you've worked with your school teams, you've worked with your educators, you've trained them to have this common mindset. But I feel like a part of that is also what you mentioned earlier, creating the safe space to fail and help those students to fail forward. Like culturally as a district, like how did your teachers respond initially when you said, "Hey, we want to work to create this space," and how did you kind of get them to
Yeah, there are
buy
some
into
that,
it?
yeah, I think there are some teachers that naturally took the challenge or saw that as an opportunity to do what they love about teaching. Um, I tried to move backwards and talk with the teachers when I was a department chair, like, why did you go into this? What do you love
Mm,
about what you do? And I've never met a teacher that says, well, I love grading papers or I love having to, go home and do X, Y, and Z. So then we talk about learning for mastery and embedding activities and lessons that create natural mastery, natural failure, so that a student and their classmates are able to provide authentic feedback to each other, bringing employers in to provide feedback. I oversaw career and technical education in our district for 5 years. And so it was one thing for the teacher to say, in bakery, this was a fabulous job that you did on these cookies. It was another thing to bring in the bakery in the area that everyone goes to and have that person provide feedback and kind of up the ante a little bit. And so by doing that, we're then sharing with our teachers, you can allow students to practice. It doesn't have to be graded. And that's another opportunity for them to get to know their students. And I think for some, that was a total mind blow. Like, what do you mean? I'm just letting them practice. I have to have something in the grade book. Well, yeah, write down that they were present, that they participated, but you can authentically go and say, you burnt that, or your weld, what do you think about your weld? Did the two pieces go together today? And I think as we're giving that authentic feedback, students are more in tune to try intrinsically for themselves
mm,
versus for the grade,
right.
because eventually we're not getting graded. It's a paycheck. And the intrinsic motivation, I think, is what we need to shift from I got an A or I got a B, where I go back to culinary, whether you cut that vegetable for an A or for a B, both can be used in the recipe. Really doesn't matter.
Right.
The end
Right.
result is this edible? Are there people that want to come to the table? Did you do something unique about it? How are you highlighting it? So those are the things that we need to show students are more important than, did I do it exactly how the teacher wants me to do it?
Yeah. Uh, I love just hearing how you're talking about that shift in motivation. I feel like it's almost a sticking point for new initiative shifts. How are the students going to react? How are families going to react? Are the community going to react? And I think you're completely right. When you can help and recognize that it's not just about that grade, they're going to be able to apply what it is they're learning in real way. And they're eager and curious to be in the building. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of positive outcomes outside of just student engagement. Like you've probably seen attendance rates stabilize and things like that as outcomes of these experiences.
Yeah, I think when we can bring our teachers back to reminding why they went into education, students don't take classes necessarily because of the title or the content. They take them because of teachers. And
Mm,
when we can bring back that authentic ability for a student to fail safely, for a student to be themselves, try crazy ideas, I think that's when we get maximum capacity out of our students. Um, I have a lot of our work-based learning partners, our community partners, especially like in the trades, that they're one question to me or in other districts that I you know consult with to say, well, how did your board get on board? Like that's the sticking point a lot of times. And we've been very fortunate where our board in our district very much right away said, we want more. We want all pathways for students. We recognize that not all students might go to a 4-year immediately, that we need to maybe introduce certification, introduce credentialing, 2-year, 4-year, military, trades, like all of that is considered education, where I don't know that all schools have that same belief. Every student is unique in their pathway. And I think the sooner we recognize that, the sooner the outcomes we all want as educational leaders are going to occur, because we're not trying to put everybody in the same box.
Right, right. Removing that cookie cutter mentality, I think,
Yeah.
is an absolute critical first step. But Gina, you were talking a bit about community partners, and I know community partnerships is a really hot topic right now. Getting out, there's CTE is a very hot who are at that stage where they're struggling to get some of those community partnerships. It's tough tapping on busy industry professionals to engage, share out about getting these industry partnerships to start looking at investing in student learning.
Yeah, this was self-taught for me. I know, like when I shifted from a classroom teacher and began overseeing workforce development at the last district I was at, manufacturing is a huge business sector in our area. I oversaw grants, so I was funding lathes and mills, but I didn't know what they were. So I knew I had to go out, figure out what they were, and it's literally just going out, figuring out what is needed in the community. I work closely with Lake County Workforce, Lake County Partners, where we all collectively have an ecosystem so that we can identify areas of need. So in our area, it's health sciences, the healthcare, manufacturing, IT, and then we always lump in education in there as well, because the teaching field is needed. And so with that, we have a concerted effort. So if I go into a new manufacturer or a hospital setting and I'm trying to pitch that I want our students to come in and do job shadowing, or I'm identifying areas that I feel our students can grow from them, but also we're creating a pipeline for them, I let them know how our area workforce development could uptrain their entry level positions so that their own employees can gain those skills to get on to the next level to allow our students to come in. So it's having that knowledge set of what the other resources are around you in order to sell that pitch. And then especially in the beginning, the product that we're sending out is going to either reap benefits or stop a connection from happening. So especially in the beginning, you're really putting your best student forward. And then as you're making that partnership with the community partner, you're able then to say, well, I have another student, but their skill set in this area is not as great, but their employability skills are outstanding.
Right.
What do you think? Can we try this next? And it's a growth of a relationship. It's an ebb and flow. There are some that work, there are some that don't, but I found more success than failure. And I think in education, what we fail to do is we don't ask. If you don't ask, you're going to be in the same place you're at, where whether it's asking for a donation of time, a donation of equipment, you have to ask. And there's more and more employers out there that are willing. And then we do a lot of inviting in, because I think when employers hear high school students, they think of a student sitting in a desk like they were in school, where whether it's manufacturing or healthcare, I bring them in to see the environment, that our students are working on the same lathe or mill or CNC machine that you have at your company. Our students are doing some of the same medical care that your entry level CNAs are. So I think by having the companies come in, it helps. We started in our welding area for our advanced manufacturing. We do a barbecue at the end of every school year. It's the capstone class. The students make hibachi grills. It's their final welds. We work with an employer to kind of do some of the bends, but then we invite every employer and our community partners, our community college, to come to the barbecue so that they can interact with the students, see their work. And from there, our students wind up getting internships, get hired, but it's creating those safe opportunities that for one student, they had a conversation with a stranger that they've never had before. That's a win. For another student, they just landed 2 different employers that are fighting after them for different apprenticeships or entry-level jobs in the manufacturing industry. So it's about just creating those opportunities and being there with the students to guide them.
hearing you kind of speak about those community relationships, I mean, I could hear the excitement in your voice when you're talking about how you started to engage these people. But one thing that really stood out to me was the idea of just asking and like, going out and doing that. You're right. I feel like so often districts can be contained in the four walls of the building, but the further we progress into this new era, a lot of educators who say, with technology today, kids have access to everything in the palm of their hands, like working with them. And I love that idea of pulling the community members like into the building, see what they're doing. But I also opportunity for you as a school system to also model feedback, getting feedback from those community partners about those experiences and adapt the programs, which then you can model the feedback to how those students are going to receive almost.
Yeah, we had our first biggest advisory meeting this past year. So we formally had internships start. I want to say it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, where they're doing them during the school day for credit. They get early college credit. Some of our students are even being paid. And it got big enough that we brought anyone that hosted an intern together. And time again, in listening to employers, they can teach them the technical skills. All of our internships are capstone experiences, so they all have like foundational precursors that they need to either take a class or make sure they have a certification before they do their internship. The part that we want feedback on is more the essential and the soft skills. So what we did is we put each of those soft skills around a room, and we asked the employers to identify overall, and these were like all sectors of work. We had about 100 students that had gone out into the community for that particular year, and just ask them identify what are the areas such as like communication, attendance, critical thinking, problem solving. What are we hitting the mark on and why? How do you know that we're hitting the mark? But what are we missing? What are, our students coming in with, or your hires in general, even if they're not our students, what are they not coming in with? Because that's the great thing about CTE is our curriculum is what the community needs. Right. And the more you're engaging in the conversations, like you just said, and gaining that feedback, it creates that partnership that continues to give because the employers know we're willing to listen. Right. We make those immediate changes. We communicate those changes, and that's how the partnership keeps coming back. All of our employers in the community, we ask to be a part of what's called mock interviews, and that's done through our personal finance classes. And through there, we then embed our internship interviews. So an internship host might say, well, I want one student, but we have them interview anyone that's interested. And so that's where the mind shift of like one of our local state senators said, okay, I'm going to take one intern on, but then interviewed 3 students and wound up taking 2. And so what they start with thinking, but then they meet and realize, wow, I can gain something from this student just as much as I can provide. It doubles or multiplies the amount of openings that we have. But the other good thing it teaches students that I don't think we've done well in the past is just because you apply doesn't mean you get it. Right. And so there are students that are turned down, and we provide feedback as to the why or what they can work on to reapply later, or maybe we guide them in another direction of another internship possibility based on feedback that they got. Because it's, participation trophies are not what occur later in life. And that's where I am a big believer on that authentic feedback so that they're able to be prepared for the workforce.
How are you guys as a district sort of embedding the development of some of these soft skills for the students? So when they go into that internship or into that community environment, they have what they need to be equipped.
Yeah. So we started the formal internship class. We're going into our 4th year, and students are enrolled into a class. So at the beginning of a semester, they are with our internship coordinator, who's a dual credit instructor with the College of Lake County. And they are earning credit in a class called Job Skill Readiness. So we have a curriculum base where we're setting them up for like how to have difficult conversations, how to, if another coworker asks you to do something or says something in a mean way, how do you respond to that? And so we're role playing with them, guiding them and getting them ready for that, keeping in mind that not all industries are the same. The teaching industry is going to be different than the manufacturing, than the trades, than IT. So in those larger groups, we're kind of doing subgroups so that they're aware of that industry sector. The state of Illinois, for our career pathway endorsement, has set up different competencies. So we work off of those competencies. And then we have, we call them lunch and learns. So once we set them loose, then in the community, both myself and my internship coordinators do spot checks. So we go in and we observe the students. We provide them feedback, both orally and written, so that they can take a peek at it. But the lunch and learns, students drop in and there's curriculum surrounding that. So the students are giving up some of their lunchtime. They bring a sack lunch, or sometimes we provide lunch, and we're going through, okay, we talked about having difficult conversations. Tell me a time when you did. And the students are all sharing with each other about difficult conversations that they've had. Maybe some have, maybe some haven't, but they're sharing those authentic experiences for each other to grow from. And then they come back at the end and they do a little presentation based on their pathway, what they've learned, the mentorships they've created. They create a LinkedIn profile, and then they learn how to think about who have you met at your internship, because it's about making those mentorship connections. And we want you to connect with that person on LinkedIn. We want you to then create a resume, update your resume. Maybe you were able to gain more experience on a certain piece of equipment or machinery. And so that's kind of what they do in the class to get them ready for it. The cool thing this past year, one of our biggest interns is with our feeder school district, District 46. Their HR coordinator found out we were doing this. He offered to come in and he goes, I'll take all the education students this year. So that wasn't an ask, that was just us sharing. Here's what we do. Here's how we teach the soft or essential skills. And then sometimes, they're offering, we jump on it. Yeah, sure. Come on in. We would love to partner with you with that.
Mm-hmm. I think it kind of goes back to just being open and communicating about the amazing work you guys are thinking. You're going out, you're working with the community as a whole often. What are some misconceptions that you're hearing from the community about today's students and career readiness?
I think the misconceptions are students are lazy. Students aren't ready for the workforce. That we've created a unique set of circumstances based off COVID. And while any of those can be true for any population, I think showing our community that we don't want necessarily to partner with every single high school student. I mean, that would be my dream, is for every high school student to have that experience. Not all students are ready for that. And so for some students, their readiness is going to a site visit. And so with the employer, for them to see what it is, an authentic workplace. But for others, it's that workplace experience, an internship, an apprenticeship, or a practicum type experience. And highlighting for our employers that students aren't sitting in a desk, they're actively being prepared for their workplace. A lot of our classrooms mirror industry. And so we really try and prepare our students for that. And as soon as our employers see that, I think that's the misconception that gets debunked very quickly, is that the students are prepared and sometimes are even more eager because they haven't had life come in front of them to kind of knock them down a little bit. They have fresh ideas where if you and I were in a think tank together and you gave an idea, I'd be like, oh no, we tried that last month. Well, a new student doesn't care about that. They're like, oh, I think I want to try this. And, with a new set of eyes, they're bringing ideas to employers that they found success with, especially in the areas of IT and in the education area, able to help classrooms have smaller groups of students work together. When it's a teacher with 24 kindergartners, if I have one or two interns that are coming in there, that's creating an assistance for the teacher, but it's also helping that young learner, because they're getting that smaller group, that one-on-one, and our students are getting that authentic feedback that, wow, I thought this lesson I was going to give the 5-year-old was going to be great, and they walked away. What better feedback is that? They walked away. So you got to do something different. You have to engage them. We could talk about that. We could read it out of a book, or we can have students be in there. And I think the more our employers see that, I am a big advocate of social media. I am all over LinkedIn, all over Twitter, bragging about our students for that purpose. It creates a natural sense of jealousy, like when we first did our barbecue, or right now we're hosting a manufacturing camp, both for middle school students and for inclusion students. And we have an employer that's sponsoring that. I had another employer reach out and said, well, I want to sponsor it just by posting something on LinkedIn. And so then that's where I'm like, well, we already have a sponsor for this, but our robotics club, which is associated with what you want to sponsor, doesn't have a sponsorship. Might you do that? And so by utilizing and telling our story, I think in education, we don't tell our story enough. It's okay to brag about what we're doing for the purpose of growing more partnerships.
Times that seeing is believing, getting those community folks into the building, and now you're just being able to scale that through visibility. Very special. For the listeners, we'll link Gina's social media handles in the description of the show so that you can go and check out some of the amazing things that they're doing. But Gina, hearing you talk about kind of the fresh perspectives that your students are bringing to these community partnerships, I'm wondering on how they can best support the student coming in to say, hey, we have somebody who's excited. They're going to bring ideas to the table. So that way their student doesn't get the best experience. So do you do any sort of coaching with them in that regard?
Definitely. We always joke, like with our ecosystem, we would love to create like an internship in a box so that we can go to a company, kind of give them the box of here's what you need to do. But our employers, I look at them a lot like our students, that every learning opportunity with an internship is a unique experience. And so it's myself, my internship coordinators, going in, working one-on-one with companies to kind of highlight, they know they want to, but they don't know how. And we need to get to know that individual company, and we're guiding them and having them visit us. And so it's that individual relationship that we're saying, okay, here's a good starting point. Let's start with this. Just right next to my office, we started an IT internship in our own district. And so in the beginning, what I thought maybe the students could do was a little bit different than what the person that oversaw it. And so that first year was us talking about like, this worked, this didn't work. And having that open communication, I think, is what helps develop that really good, authentic experience. We had another employer when we went to block scheduling. She loves our students. It's a local manufacturer. And she's like, Gina, I hate your block scheduling. I don't understand it. I don't get why students are coming like every other day. And so we took that feedback back and we changed. We actually changed our internship schedule based on that. So it really is developing an individual plan for every employer. We try and mirror per sector. So I might say, if one manufacturer is reaching out to me or one CNA program is reaching out to me, I'll say, here's what we did in, your competitor's area. Would you like to know about that? Some absolutely do. Some you don't even say the competitor's name when you're there. But it's an individual plan, and not in a bad way. And when I say this, people laugh. Employers are kind of like toddlers, where they need kind of that immediate gratification. Right. Where schools, we like to have meetings and we like to, have committees to make decisions, and the two don't go together very well. So that's where those that are working with employers, we need to be able to kind of identify that student right away that's going to hook them, or identify the experience that will hook them while we're still doing the school thing of having the committees and making those decisions and kind of navigating newness. But it's a unique world. That was one of my first, I did corporate sponsored daycare for a while, and it was Motorola with daycare. So you had an organization that had no turnover with an organization that has a ton of turnover. And it was a clash of worlds until the two really got to know each other and knew how that ebb and flow. And so that's what working with the community in a school is like. Schools take a long time to make decisions. Companies, by the time they've made the decision and want you, they want you yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And it leads me to kind of think to change and adapt. Do you kind of keep your programs fresh and up to speed with the rapid changes that we're seeing happening across industry?
Yeah, we have to. We have to be able to create the workforce that I worry about our county, that our county needs. And so by having those advisories, doing those regular check-ins with the employers, and also seeking feedback from our students, like how are you treated there? And how are you welcomed? How was the onboarding? Sometimes that doesn't go all that well, and we're needing to provide feedback. In culinary, I think is one that brings, the most change, where for a long time, rote memorization is how we taught things. Where I know if I'm at my house and I can't find my fourth, 1/4 measuring cup, I'm going to say to Alexa, I have this and this. What can I use? And that was a mind shift, I think, for our teachers to know that,
Right.
Where do we need rote memorization? Where do we need how to now teach our students how to use the resources? And I am a firm believer, if we go with the resources first, and if students are able to practice and practice again enough times, they're going to memorize it because they've done it so many times.
Right.
And then working with different populations, we have students, our students with unique needs. They might never be able to memorize things that way. And so utilizing AI and utilizing some different resources opens up entire workforces and career possibilities for some of our students as well.
And hitting on some of those technologies like AI and how we need to embed it into our cultures of school to prepare students for the future. I wonder, your opinion on balancing, preparing students for what they're doing today and going to go into your community to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's where, I'm very proud of the stance that our district took on AI. You have certain districts that are like, absolutely not, it's cheating, where people are using it in the workforce. So let's teach students correct ways. It's great for brainstorming. It's great for, I use it all the time for writing grants. So like teaching students how to correctly use it. And I think the best way to describe, we're preparing our students for an unknown world. And unlike you and I, we went to school, we are in a career path, and we tend to stay in that career path. We are now preparing students for their first career. And what's so important is to make sure to teach them how to use transferable skills. And so teaching or the healthcare industry, both are working with people. So if one were to shift or the other, you're teaching a student how to go back to that question that we asked them early in high school. What did you like about it?
Right.
What did you not like about it? And those are transferable skills. You have someone that may be in the auto industry and an automotive area goes under, but press brake and manufacturing, there's a lot of transferable skills there. And it's showing the students that this is the beginning of your career,
Right.
But know that you're going to shift, you're going to ebb and flow. And how do we use those?
I just love transferable skills. And I feel like so much of it is just having a conversation with students to say, hey, what you're learning today, how to communicate to that community barbecue, to network,
Yes.
and what that's going to look like for the rest of your life, and how those things are critical, I think is such an important distinction, especially when we start thinking about, if a student's embedded in a welding or a manufacturing course. It's like, okay, yes, you're learning the hard skills, you are learning how to weld back, and that's the transferable nature that you're going to need to be successful to navigate the real world outside of that. So to me, there's such a balance of these programs to help students understand, like what you mentioned, their career journey is going to be vast and it's going to be long. If you have an example of a student who you found, their trajectory was changed because of work?
Yeah, I have several students that I can think of. The first I'll talk about, we have a partnership with a farm. And at this juncture where our community partnerships have grown leaps and bounds, I'm now at the point where I want the community partner that is the gift that keeps on giving. Meaning, the partnership with the farm, one might think agriculture, but we have a class, engineering a sustainable future, where we do farming, we do sustainable engineering, we do a plant sale both in the fall and in the spring. And so that allows our students to learn how to be marketers, be entrepreneurship, practice their entrepreneurship skills. And so partnerships that allow many different pathways are what I'm most interested in now. And so a student, his name is Enzo. He was taking the engineering sustainable future class and took it because, that was one of the electives that were open, but wound up realizing that this was his passion. This is the area he's going to study in school. But then he had to have a conversation with family because this was maybe not the most conventional pathway. And inviting family to come in and see what the student is doing, see the viable pathway. I think that's, a really important thing to do. Another example is this year we did a partnership with our local 130, which is the plumbers union. And the majority of our students that were identified in that area were not native English speakers. And we had the opportunity to teach our local tradespeople how to work with students where English was not their first language, showing them here are some resources we use, here are some devices we use. Well, it wound up the student that was the best of the plumbing candidates for the apprenticeship didn't speak a lick of English. And it was awesome because it showed the teamwork and the participation and how he was being successful, even though there was a huge barrier there. And our local 130 told us they typically have not hired students where English was not their first language. And, we introduced a whole new pipeline of students that are very interested, but this industry just didn't know how to interact. And by partnering with the school, we taught them kind of the teacher skills of what to do in order to prepare our students. We had 18 students that went through the Bridge program. And of those, 10 were eligible to apply for the apprenticeship and 5 got chosen. And so those students, and some of which they not only had the apprenticeship, which they're getting their education paid for, but they were also offered separately. They were doing manufacturing internships and were offered jobs there too. So now we have a student that has a nice choice in front of them as to, what their next pathway is. And that's the most awesome conversation to have with caregivers is I've got lots of opportunities in front of me, all of which are paid. But which path should I start down first?
Right. And I imagine then we go back to those, what did you like? What did you not like? And you get to just have a really authentic conversation. That's the point, right? Is to figure that out. Why do you see work-based learning being so critical to the future of our K-12 education system?
I think it is our job to show students the why. Why are they going to school? Why are they learning what they're learning? And then also it's our job to create our living environments around us, our county. We're responsible for creating a pipeline for the industries that are in high demand in our area. And in return, those industries can help create those authentic learning environments. The more we can put in front of our students the ability to figure out what they like and they don't like, give them opportunity to fail safely, and have guidance and mentorship around them, kind of help give them the next step, and or allow them to, I failed, now I have the tools, I'm going to try it again. If they're able to do that safely in high school, it's going to make them a more productive post-secondary student, a more productive citizen. It's hoping that they then come back into the community that helped guide them and provided them mentorship. So it's really working symbiotically, in a systematic way, both with the community and with the school system, because we want to grow within. We want our communities to thrive. And the more our communities get involved in that education process, they're going to reap the benefits, because students tend to go back to what they're familiar with. And if they're familiar with your company or your brand, or, those that helped mentor them, they're going to tend to come back and stay. And, we hope that our graduates become our next group that will host interns, because they've reaped the benefits. And so that's my big goal.
Right. And I can't help but feeling, you're helping develop such a keen sense of resiliency with your students. That's working with this organization, and that first time you have a legitimate challenge, or you make that first mistake and you take it so personally. Oh my, because we were never taught how to be resilient, how to move past it, everything, so you're doing such a great service in embedding that within your students. And I think it's just such an amazing outcome that you're talking about, of those students are going to become the leaders of tomorrow, who just continue this cycle, right? And you're really fostering such an amazing aspect within your community. But kind of final thoughts as we're wrapping up here today, Gina, what is it about this work that ignites your spark?
This is my passion. I always tell everyone, I'm over 50 and I have landed my dream job. Being able to provide students different opportunities to figure out their likes and their dislikes. I didn't have that growing up. I went to, a school, and I love where I went. I got a great education, but I didn't have a lot of pathways put in front of me, a lot of different opportunities. And what drives me a little bit, I remember going to school. I did my very first student teaching, and it was a woman that was on the verge of retiring. She was crabby. And I called home and I said, I don't want to become that. And so I didn't do my final student teaching at that time. And I went and got a minor in business, because I had worked for my father part-time in the banking industry. And my counselor at the time said, you are never going to amount to anything by putting education and business together. And that was my motivation. Anyone that knows me, if you say no or can't, I just wanted that much more. But by telling me I couldn't, because of two things I was curious about, putting them together, I don't want that to happen to any student. And so I think my experience motivates me to make sure that we never tell a student they can't. We listen to them, we hear their why, we share our why, and the community also helps them see the why in why we have to have, so many math classes if you want to become an engineer, or why we need to have a chemistry class if you want to be a pharmacist. I want the community to show them the why. But at that same time, we as educators need to listen to our students, because sometimes they're going to come to us with the crazy ideas like I did. And I don't want someone to put a wall up. I want someone to be able to listen. And, part of my job, I love when a student's like, hey, I want to be a pilot. Okay. I don't have that, but I'm going to go find that for you.
Right.
Let's go find it. That is my biggest thrill. It's like the thrill of the seek when, we don't have that partnership and I get to go seek that partnership. And then if we get it, it's a huge win for the student, but now it's a win that just because one asked, I know there's 10 more out there that didn't ask that want as well.
Right. Providing the space, the opportunity, find the path that is right for them. Gina, Thank you so much for joining us today here on the show.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
That was educator, connector, and advocate for hands-on, purpose-driven learning, Gina Schuyler. Hey, thanks for listening to the show, and please make sure to hit the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. I'm Jordan Lewis, and you've been listening to the Growth Over Grades podcast.